of the physical parameters that can be considered under routine semen analysis. And semen often smells like chlorine. And as scientists, all of us have the concept or the impression of what chlorine smells like, or for that matter, bleach. Okay, all of us use bleach for disinfections in the lab. That's the hypochlorite. Okay, right. So that's the smell of semen. And at times can have a stale or moldy or fishy odor. Okay, so all of us are matured and we have a scent of what semen smells of. Okay. Now, that characteristic, that fishy smell is described as musty, M-U-S-T-Y. So if you have to report on the smell, and for that matter, odor of semen, use the word musty. It has an extraordinary, strong, fishy, pungent smell. That a bone like foul smelling of a sort. Then that one you have to write it like fishy, pungent smell, and that connotes an infection. Yeah, I mean, gives the impression that there's an infection within the genitourinary tract. All right. Yeah. Sometimes you may have semen that doesn't smell of anything. It's like, as if it's like water. Not water in the sense of it's watery, but the smell doesn't smell of anything. Then it means that it has a prostatic problem, because the smell, the bleachy and the chlorine smell is coming from the prostate. The prostatic secretion smells of bleach. Okay, right. So if, I mean, the specimen do not smell of anything, I mean, you don't have to feel that it smells of anything, then you could also begin to suspect that there could be a prostatic issue. All right. So that's just a little on the semen odor, or for that matter, smell. And that actually completes the discussion on the macroscopic examinations. All right. So now we go for today's lecture, which is on microscopic examinations. On the microscopy, the parameters that we'll be going to deal with will include the motility. With the motility, you're going to look at quantitative and qualitative. Of course, quantity is how much, okay? It's like how much of it is moving. Quality, I mean, in what direction? Quality. So we're going to look at the motility and then two aspects of it, the quantitative motility and then the qualitative motility. We're going to talk about sperm viability. Viable is the same thing as vitality. So the two can be used interchangeably. So we're going to look at sperm viability and sperm vitality, and when to do that particular test. We're going to look at sperm morphology, which we have done extensively under the spermatogenesis. All right, so, but it is supposed to be part of the macroscopic examinations on the semen. And so you transport that information that we learned in spermatogenesis and then fill it up with some of the few things that we have to do under semen analysis. We're going to look at sperm agglutination and sperm aggregation, and we're going to look at what is the difference between the two. And then, of course, the almighty sperm count. So we're going was where you're talking about physical examinations or macroscopic examinations. In the ones that you're talking about now, you can't do without a microscope, and therefore they are classified as microscopic examinations. All right. So the nature of semen makes taking a representative problematic. As it is, like the sample has come, then you take portions of it. It's going to be problematic because any portion that you take, you are going to get different results. And then the element of reproducibility becomes a challenge because this specimen, I took a drop of it, I examined, and when I try to repeat it, or somebody came to do it, it's getting a completely different result. Differences in sperm motility, concentration, and morphology. This is what I've tried to explain because the fractions are different. All right. If you take two different aliquots, two drops at two different times, you are very likely to get completely different results. And that could be of a great concern. And therefore, for purposes of uniformity and reproducibility, the sample ought to be thoroughly mixed. Thorough mixing doesn't mean shake it and then create bubbles and then all what have you know. For gently mix, gentle mixing, that's what we're talking about. So that all the different portions, all the different fractions can become uniform. So that in so doing, any aliquot that you pick will be like, will be the same because now the sample is now completely uniform. Good. So thorough mixing and representative sampling of semen can be obtained by using a wide bore disposable pipette to aspirate and discharge the sample about 10 times. All that it means is that if you have a sample, instead of shaking it, all right, in attempt to mix, instead of shaking it, what you can also do is to use a transfer pipette, the plastic types, you know that they have a larger bore. I mean, the outlets is big enough. So if you have the sample, just use especially once the sample has liquefied, you just use that that pipette, aspirate and then deliver it back. So you do that, you aspirate and then discharge it back into the container about 10 times, and that will thoroughly mix the entire sample. All right, that is one approach that I recommend for you. Okay, and even doing that, you still have to be very gentle. Not that you aspirate and then you push it hard into it, and then if you do that, you can damage the sperm cells. All right, so in all these things, gentility is the hallmark. If the number of sperms per microscopic field varies considerably, it indicates that semen is not homogeneous. In such cases, the semen sample should be remixed and examined again. What it means is that if I take a drop of semen, all right, and then I'm trying to examine it, then I see that in one field, I'm seeing about 20 sperms. Then the same slide, another field, I see nothing. I go to another field, I see just about 3. I go to another field, I see about 10 slide. 10. It means that there is inconsistency in the distribution of the sperms. And that means that the sample has not been homogeneous. What it means is that the mixing has not been adequate. So that's also a way to test whether the sample has been adequately mixed. I hope that point is very clear. All right, so it's like a test of what you have done. I mean, you think that you have mixed it. a test for it is that once it makes then to be homogeneous, then the sperms or particles in this should be as much as possible uniformly distributed. So if in this particular case you are getting different numbers across the different fields, then all it means is that the sample has not been properly mixed, and all you have to do is to remix so that you get that homogeneity. All right. Then wet mount preparations. So we said that when sample come in, the first thing to do will be your volume, because we said that in the volume measurement, we recommend the weight, the application of the weight method. In the weight method, you don't need to allow the specimen to clot or allow the specimen to liquefy. You don't need that. All you need is what is the weight of the sample that has been delivered. And the weight of that is the pre-weight or the pre-ejaculate weight, because we're saying that the container should first be weighed. The container you're going to give the patient should be weighed. The value should be written on the container. As soon as the sample comes in, weigh it again. So you get the post-ejaculate container weight, and then you take the difference. The difference will give you something in grams. Whatever value you get, for the difference is equivalent to the males, because the density of semen is gram per male. So it means that 1 gram is equivalent to right, sorry, I'm back. So when sample have been delivered, the first thing to do is your volume measurement. And the volume, I've said that I strongly recommend the use of the weights method, where you take the weight of the raw container, you take the weight after the sample has been delivered, and then the difference is equivalent to, if the difference is 1.7 grams, the 1.7 grams is equivalent to the 1.7 mils. I think we discussed that extensively yesterday. All right, so that's the first thing. Second thing is to allow the sample to liquefy. Once it's liquefied, the next thing you want to do is the pH, because we said that as you delay, pH could also be compromised, because semen, as it stands, will lose carbon dioxide, and therefore the sample becomes more alkaline. And once it becomes more alkaline, it presupposes that there is infection and so forth and so on, or probably there's a problem with the seminal vesicles, which is not true, but it is because of the fact that the sample has been allowed to stay for more than 1 hour. So there are certain things that you have to do immediately, and that is also dealt with. And then secondly, what to do next will be your wet mount. Okay, you do your wet mount. So following semen liquefaction, pH is measured, and then remember we say following liquefaction. So following liquefaction, I have not brought in the element of volume measurement here, because if volume measurement, you don't need to wait for liquefaction. That's why I made that, but I'm sure that you get it now. All right, so after liquefaction, the next thing to do is the pH measurement. Then immediately you do your wet preparation. So of course, you mix the sample very well, and then a wet mount. Okay, so a wet mount is just a wet mount, a drop of the well mixed specimen onto a slide, and then apply a cover slip. In this thing, we need to be very, very careful there's what you call standardization. As we move along, I was explaining what is standardization in wet mount. After a wet mount is supposed to be a more wet mount, any drop, you apply cover slip and blah, 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 you go. But it is not so for semen. Semen wet mount is standardized, and I'll show you where the standardization comes from. So, remove an aliquot or a semen immediately after mixing, allowing no time for the spermatozoa to settle out of suspension. Remix the semen sample before removing replicate aliquots. What it means is that if, let's say, I mix the specimen and then I pull out a drop, then I examine, I just want to repeat. If you want to repeat, don't assume that you have already mixed, because you see, the semen is a liquid substance, okay? Cells are cells. When you have cells in any liquid medium, I mean, they begin to settle, even within 5 minutes. The cells will begin to settle. So if I mix the specimen and then I took a drop to examine, if I'm going to take a second drop, I have to remix, because some of the cells will begin to what? To settle. And then once you take your drop, when you take your dropper, depends on where you are taking it. It could be from the surface or it could be from the bottom. If it's from bottom, you are going to take too much of the sperms. If it's also on the top, you are going to take less of it. So to make that kind of standardization uniformity, you have to remix before you take a duplicate aliquot. I hope that point is clear. What I mean is that you mix it, you take a drop, then you wanted to repeat. In repeating, don't assume that you have already mixed, because that small element of time will cause some of the cells to settle. And then that will give you a different reportage with respect to the previous slide that we did. All right. Now, let's move on. There's something interesting I want you to know. Good. In preparing wet mount for semen, there should be standardization. I mentioned that. What is this standardization? What it means is that one drop, okay, you can't just take any drop. The drop that you take should be approximately 10 microliters. And 10 microliters, you can get 10 microliters if you have a micropipette. That would be fantastic. You take, even for the wet mount, you are going to use the micropipette to take 10 microliters. If you don't have that one, you know that we have some transfer pipettes, especially the plastic type. Sorry, did I say the glass type? These days, many people, no, this glass type of pipettes, I'm sure they are getting off from the scene. All we are getting is the plastic disposable transfer pipettes, the pasta pipettes. But we used to have a particular pasta pipette, which is glass, and it has a long tubing. All right. And you see that the bore there is very, very small. That one delivers around 10 microliters. Okay. But unfortunately, we don't have that one any longer in the system. Those of you who have it, this is the one to use when it comes to doing a wet mount. In wet mount, I'm saying that you need 10 microliters. The reason is that you have said that we want standard wet mount. Standard wet mount means that if I do it, the preparation that I do, if somebody comes to also do a second one, or me myself, I'm doing a second one, the depth, everything will be the same. How will it be the same? Now, you know that you have cover slips, the 22 by 22. All right. So that is the one which is recommended for semen wet mounts. Now, so if I'm using a 22 by 22 cover slip and somebody's using the 22 by 32, you know, cover slips, you have a variety of them. Some, especially those in histopathology, they could even have 22 by 50, 22 by 40, 22 by 32, and so forth and so on. The normal one for most of the microbiology, especially microbiology work, will be 22 by 22. All right. So if you use 22 by 22 and you use a 10 microliter dropper or a 10 microliter sample, whether it is semen or whatever, use 10 microliters. Who can tell me the depth of the suspension that you're going to get under the cover slip? I don't know whether you're following the discussion. I'm saying that you put a 10 microliter drop with a volume of 10 microliters on a slide, and then you apply a 22 by 22 slide cover slip on it. You are sure that you are going to get a certain suspension. That one you know, because the cover slip is definitely not going to be on top of the slide. The cover slip is going to be on top of the suspension, and so that between the suspension and the slide, that is where the specimen is covering, and that is giving you a depth. How will you calculate that depth? How will you calculate that depth? Who can tell me? Yes, this is basic science. You have a 10 microliter drop of semen. You put it on a slide. You apply a 22 by 22 cover slip on it. What will be the suspension, the depth of the suspension of the preparation under the cover slip? Yes, anybody to try it? Okay. Let me go to the next slide. Is anybody trying it? Good. Good. Fantastic. Fantastic. Kuda. Right. So Kuda is getting it right. The 10 here is 10 microliters. Okay. The 10 there is 10 microliters. And 10 microliters is the same thing as 10 millimeter cube. Okay. Millimeter cube is equivalent to 1 microliter. And since you are dealing with 22 by 22 millimeters, you are dealing with 22 by 22 millimeters. It means that you are dealing in millimeters, and therefore the microliter should also be converted to millimeters. Once you convert the microliter to millimeters, you are going to get 10 millimeter cube. Okay, you know that for a volume, it is length times breadth times height. And here it is the height that is going to give you the depth that we want. It is going to be the depth that we want is going to be your height. So if the cover slip is 22 by 22, that is going to be like the area, then the height. So times the height, the h, the depth will give you 10. And therefore, if you want your h, which is the height or the depth of the suspension, it should be the 10 divided by 22 by 22. And remember the 10 here is 10 millimeter cube. 10 millimeter cube. And if you have 10 millimeter cube divided by 22 by 22, the 22 by 22 is going to give you 484 or so, yes. 484. So if you divide 10 by 484, and remember up there, you are going to get millimeter cube. And down there, you are going to get millimeter square, because this 22 is 22 millimeters by 22 millimeters. So you are going to get that value 484 millimeter square. And then the up there, the denominator is also going to be 10 millimeter cube, because the microliter is going to be converted to millimeter cube, so that you can it can conform with the millimeter square down the denominator. Now, the millimeter square will cancel the millimeter cube to give you millimeter. So it means that the result is going to be in millimeters. I hope that you are following it. Because the top 10 microliters is going to be 10 millimeter cube. The down is 22 by 22. 22 by 22. So it's going to be 22 by 22 millimeter square. So the millimeter square denominator is going to cancel itself and cancel 2 of the millimeter cube. So the upper one is going to be left with 1 millimeter, a millimeter. So it means that the result is going to be millimeter. Once we divide 10 by 22 by 22, as Boga said, then you are going to get somewhere in the range of, calculate, let me see, 10 divided by 22 times 22, what do you get? Ten divided by 22 by 22, what do you get? Yes. Anybody come in? All right, so if you divide 10 by, good, you are going to get 0.02. And remember, I said this 0.02 is going to be, well, 0.02 millimeters. Okay, it's going to be 0.02 millimeters. Millimeters because the upper, the numerator is 10 millimeter cube. And the denominator is going to be 484 millimeter square. So the 0.02 that we get, its unit is going to be what? Millimeters. So you are going to get 0.02 millimeters. This 0.02 millimeters should be converted to micrometers because we're dealing with organisms, microorganisms, and measurements are in micrometers. So the 0.02 millimeters, what will be its value in micrometers? Yes. Tell us. The 0.02 here is 0.02 millimeters. What is its equivalent in micrometers? Yes. See that I'm challenging you, eh? So 0.02 millimeters in micrometers is going to give you 20 micrometers. Micrometers, sorry. 0.02 millimeters. If you want to convert it to micrometers, you multiply by 1,000. If you multiply by 1,000, you're going to get 20 micrometers. So you see that you get a depth of 20 micrometers, and this depth is what is going to be available. That's the space that's going to be available for the sperm, so that we are not going to get one sperm lying on another sperm. Okay, so there's going to be a one layer thing, so that the sperms will be lying on one layer. If you allow too much of it, then the sperms will be lying on each other. And when they lie on each other, you can make a proper assessment. If you, oh yes, the cover slip we are talking about here is the same cover slip anybody use anywhere. The cover slip is the same, 22 by 22. I'm saying that sometimes people just write cover slip and you don't even bother to find the measurements or the dimensions or the specifications. You have the normal one you're using is 22 by 22. And you have 22 by 30, you have 22 by 32, you have 22 by 40, and all those things, the variety is useful for histopathology because in histopathology, they take sections, and sometimes some of the sections are very long. So you cannot take, use two different, what do you call, cover slips on the same slide. So that's why we have that type, which which can even be 22 by 50. 22 is because I'm sure you know the dimensions of our slide. Dimension of our slide should be known, 25 by 75. You should know this. So if you put a cover slip, the cover slip cannot also be 25. The cover slip should have a little space. If you put a cover slip on it, it should have a little space here and there, so that in case there's any excess specimen, you can mop it. All right. So if the slide is 22 and the slide to the standard size 22, 25, and then the length is 75. So this 25 section, if you put the cover slip there, if the cover slip is also 25, then it's going to be like edge to edge, and there's nothing you can do. So the 22 by 20, the 22, once you put it on a slide, it leaves some small, so you are left with 3, 22, and then on 25. So you are left with 3. So if you put a cover slip there, you see that there's a small space here at one side, a space that will be about 1.5 and 1.5 each. Okay, so that if there is, let's say you prepare some suspension is too much, you can mop it up. Okay. All right. So for the histology, mount is long. So if you are in histology, I'm not talking about the mountant. I'm talking about the section itself. Some sections are too long. Okay. They may cut a longitudinal section of something and it's long, and 22 by 22 slide will just not fit it. Okay, because you are going to mount it anyway, and then under a cover slip. The cover slip we use in microbiology, hematology, and it's the same cover slip, but they have various specifications of various sizes. I'm saying that the normal sizes we use in most of our labs is the 22 by 22. I'm saying that you can have 22 by 32, 22 by 40, 22 by 50. But those ones are not useful or needed in, let's say, hematology. Hematology, what are you doing? Sickling. And then you go and use a 22 by 40 cover slip. You're only going to waste a whole suspension. All right. So all that I'm saying is that it is the 22 by 22 cover slip that you have to use for your Semen wet mount. And the standardization you're talking about here is that if you take 10 microliters, you can calculate the depth that you are going to get. Okay, and that is the standardization we're talking about. Because you have taken a microliter, 10 microliters, so it is known. The size of the cover slip is also known, 22 by 22. So once you know this, you can calculate the depth. This is what I was challenging you to do. All right. So you have 22 by 22 as a cover slip. You have your suspension. So if you put the cover slip on it, the depth of the suspension under the cover slip can be calculated. And this is what we have tried to do all this while. And that calculation will give you 0.02, I mean, it's 0.0206 something, but all you need is at least up to 2 decimal points, which is 0.02. The unit there is going to be millimeters. And I've explained why it is millimeters. It is millimeters because the 10, which is the numerator, is 10 microliters. And 10 microliters can be converted to millimeter cube. Okay, 10 millimeter, because this is volume. So its conversion should be millimeter cube. Now, the denominator is going to give you 20 millimeter squared, because 22 millimeter by 22 millimeter will give you an area which is millimeter squared. So the unit column, the down is millimeter squared, the up is millimeter cube. So if you cancel out, you are going to get millimeter. So that's how come your 0.02 has a unit of millimeter. So you get 0.02 millimeters. Now I'm saying that this is something in micros. So how will you convert this one to micros? So then we know that if you have millimeter, you want to convert to microliter. Sorry, millimeter to micrometer. It is a matter of multiplying by 1,000. If you have micrometer, you want to convert to millimeter. That one you divide by 1,000. But this one is millimeters. You want to convert to micrometers, you have to multiply by 1,000. So if you multiply 0.02 by 1,000, you are going to get 20. And this 20 is now 20 micrometers. So you see that the suspension under the cover slip is 20 microliters. And that will give you just a space for one spermatozoa at a time. Okay, so that is how we say it is standardized, so that you are going to get a one-layer suspension. So if you have a one-layer suspension, you can easily, describe so if you take a higher volume, you are going to get a depth more than 20 microliters. And that would mean that some sperms can lie on another one. But if it's 20 microliters, it can only occupy one sperm at a time. Again, if you take a drop less than 10 microliters, or you take 10 microliters, yet you go and take a 22 by 32 cover slip, it means that if you do the calculations, you see that the depth, the suspension, the depth that you get is going to be less than 20 microliters. And in that case, it will constrict the movement of the sperm, so that you see that, okay, meanwhile, you're going to use the wet mount to assess motility, but you are constricting the sperm in its motility. And at the end of the day, you say that motility is low, but you yourself have created a condition said that the sperm cannot move. So these are the science behind what you call about the standardization of the wet mount. If you do your wet mount very well, you get a good information about a lot of the things about the sperms. This is all that we're talking about. I hope you followed it. Good. So examine the freshly made wet mount as soon as the contents are no longer drifting. Of course, whenever you prepare any wet mount, okay, there's drifting of a sort, and that drifting is going to probably give a wrong interpretation about the movement of the sperms. So of course, you need to give it a little time for it to settle. Okay, but you don't have to allow so much time, because in wet mounts, as you allow too much time, it is prone to drying up. Okay, it can dry. So within a matter of a minute or so, it is okay. It shouldn't be more than 1 or 2 minutes. Then you can now examine. Examine using the high power field, the ×40 objective. And that will give you, what magnification will that give you? If you use the high power field, what magnification are you talking about? Yes. You're using your high power field for your microscopic examination. What magnification will you be talking about? Yes, this one, quick. Somebody should drop it. You are using the ×40 objective. What magnification are we talking about macroscopically? Anybody to help us? You know that in microscopy, magnification is the objective times the eyepiece. Eyepiece is usually fixed. Yes, it's here. Oh, 400. That's good. So Silas, that's good. Thank you. Okay, so without 2 Camellia, I'm sorry, I didn't see that one. So that's 400. Since all of us are senior men, I'm supposing. So, and so this is when students come around. These are the small things you should be able to let them know. All right, so total magnification is the product of the objective and the eyepiece. The eyepiece is usually fixed at 10. And so if your objective is times 40, of course, your total magnification should be 40 times the 10. That will give you 400 times. All right, so, and that will give you a fair view of the sperm appearance, their movement, and everything. All right. Wet mounts and wet preparations help assess the sperm appearance. Okay, I'm sure you can appreciate that. It will also help you to assess the motility and the progression type. It can also importantly help you to make a decision as to what dilution to make, because at the end of the day, you will be doing sperm count, and sperm count will require a dilution. And dilution will also be based on the number of sperm that you saw in your wet mount. That's why I'm saying that if you do your wet mount very well, you can easily give you an idea about what optimal dilution to make to give you a good count. Okay, that's where the standardization comes in better. So if you do the proper standardization, as you move along, if you get a certain number of sperms, you will have an idea how the sperm count should be. Okay, and that is what we're also going to take you through. All right, so your wet preparations will help you to assess the sperm appearance, to help you to assess the motility, the progression type, the dilution required. Just the wet mount will give you an idea about what dilution to make. And then, of course, if there's sperm agglutination and sperm aggregation, you will also see it. And then mucus transformation. If there's mucus, I'm sure all of us know mucus. If there's mucus, it means that the sample is not even properly liquefied. And so your wet mount can also give you that information. In the presence of cells other than spermatozoa, which you call round cell, you do all this. But all that you're saying is that the wet mount that you do gives you a whole lot of information. And that's why standardization is very, very important. If you do it the standard way that we are taking you through, you will see that semen analysis you do, if the person should go and repeat it anywhere in the world, I mean, there will be no, variation. If there's going to be a variation, it's going to be a variation as a result of a variation consequential to the semen production, because we said that semen can, the production is highly variable. Okay, subject to substantial variation. That's otherwise, if the same specimen, somebody is repeating it anywhere, and you go by these standards, you'll always be on top. All right. How to use the wet mount preparation to estimate sperm concentration. Like we said, if you do the standard wet preparation, then if you get less than 20 sperms in the high power field, the sample is oligospermic. Okay, so what it means that you can just look at the wet mount, and then for each this thing you are seeing just less than 10 sperms in the high power field. You see, it means that that semen, there's no way you can get 15 million. Remember, we're saying that the sperm count now, the reference point has been paid at 15 million. Okay, 15 million per male. If you are getting less than 20 sperms, and in this case, it means that you are meeting the standard wet mount, where you just took about 10 microliters and then apply your 22 by 22, where it gives you that kind of uniform standard wet mount. If the sperm that you are seeing per field is less than 20, it means that there is no way your sperm count, if you did that one, somebody did a sperm count, and then it tells you that, oh, I got let's say 18 million, you can tell the person that, no, please repeat it. Repeat it. You can't get 18 million sperms from what I saw. Okay, that's what we're talking about, oligospermic. Now, if the sperms, if you are getting more than 20 sperms per field in each, it means that that count is likely to go beyond 50 million. Okay, so it's likely to be of normal density. And then in this case, once the sperm count is going to be lower, you will require lower dilution. Okay, because if you do a high dilution, the sperms are going to be very scattered. Okay, if the numbers are not enough, yet you do a high dilution, sometimes you can't even get some to count. So to estimate even the dilution factor to make. So if the sperms are less than 20 per field, then you don't need to do a 1 in 20 dilution. All right. So probably a 1 in 10 dilution will do, so that you'll be able to do a proper count. However, if for every field you are getting more than 20 sperms per high power field, then definitely you are likely to hit more than 50 million, and the recommended dilution will be 1 in 20. All right. Thank you. If sperms in a high power field are too numerous to count, so that you do a wet mount and then the whole field is filled with sperms, so that you can't even count, then it means that that sperms, of course, is going to be normal, but the count is going to be extremely high. In that case, if you do the regular 1 in 20 dilution, the count is still going to be high. You can't count. So it means that you need to make a high dilution. And a high dilution, you can make 1 in 40, depending on how you see the entire preparation. If they are too much, you may have to do 1 in 40. You can even do 1 in 80 or 1 in 100. Now, let's pause here and take some note. If you did a 1 in 20 dilution, okay, you did a 1 in 20 dilution and saw that the sperms are just too much in your chamber. Of course, you do the counting procedure and go through these things. You did the 1 in 20 dilution, and then you saw that, oh, the sperms are just too much. You can't count them. And therefore, you want to, let's say, do even 1 in 100 dilution. If you want to do 100 dilution, don't go back to the specimen and collect how much of the specimen to collect, how much of the diluting fluid to collect to give you 100. No, you don't have to do that. You do the serial dilution concept. Serial dilution is where you have already made one dilution. You are going to use that dilution to make another dilution. Okay, so that if let's say I have made 1 in 20 dilution and I want to make 1 in 40 dilution. Okay. Now, I will make 1 in 2 dilution from my 1 in 20 dilution. Okay. If I do a 1 in 2 dilution from a 1 in 20 dilution, remember 1 in 2 mathematically is 1 over 2. Sorry, 1 in 20 is mathematically 1 over 20. That's the ratio. When I say 1 in 2, it means 1 over 2. When I say 1 in 20, it means 1 over 20. So if I do a 1 in 2 from a 1 in 20, it becomes 1 in 2 of a 1 in 20. Please take note. I can do a 1 in 2 dilution from an already diluted 1 in 20 suspension. If I do that 1 in 2 from a 1 in 20 dilution, then the expression is 1 in 2 of a 1 in 20 dilution. And therefore it becomes 1 over 20 times of means times. Is that not it? Of means times. So 1 in 20 or 1 over 20 times 1 over 2. Because I did 1 in 2 of a 1 in 20. So it becomes 1 in 2 times 1 in 20. So 1 over 2 times 1 over 40. And that will give you 1 over 40. Okay. So if you have a 1 in 20 dilution already, and you saw that, oh, the sperms are too many, I want to make a 1 in 80 dilution. What will be your next step? Yes. I did a dilution, a suspension. I did 1 in 20 dilution. and I saw that, oh, the sperms are too much. Even if I do 1 in 40 dilution, it will still be too much. Rather, I'm going to do a 1 in 80 dilution. What step will you take? What dilution will you make from the 1 in 20 dilution? Yes, I want an answer, please. You have prepared a 1 in 20 dilution, and then you decided that, oh, the sperms are too much. Let me make 1 in 80 dilution. I'm saying that under that circumstance, don't go back to the original sample and then decide to do a 1 in 80 dilution from there. But you can do a 1 in 80 from your 1 in, that's fantastic for you. That's my Clifford. So Clifford, that's great. So you do a 1 in 4 from the 1 in 20, and that will be 1 over 4 times 1 over 20, and that will give you 1 in 80. Fantastic. So any dilution that you have, you can use the serial dilution concept to move up. So for example, if you still want to make 100 dilution, remember, normally we encourage people to do a 120 dilution, especially if the sperm count from your wet mount is within the range of, let's say, more than 20 sperms per fold. Then a 120 dilution is advised or recommended. If it is too high, very good. This one is correct. But Danny, it is not 1 in 4 from the 20. It should be 1 in 4 from 1 in 20. Okay. So check the answer Clifford gave. 1 in 4 from or off 1 in 20. That's correct. This one, if I have to mark you, I'm tempted to mark you wrong. All right. So if you have to make 100 dilution, you can make 1 in 5 from the 1 in 20. You're going to get 100. So whenever you have made a lower dilution, you can always make a high dilution from using your base dilution without necessarily going back to the sample again. And this is very, very important for all of us. Thank you. Right, so let's move on. So now you do a wet mount, and then you can use the wet mount to assess our motility. So sperm motility. Of course, sperm motility refers to the ability of the sperm to move and swim swiftly. And remember, we said that sometimes you create artificial inability of the sperm movement when you prepare slides that are too thin. If the slide is too thin, you do a calculation, you see that you may be creating a depth under the suspension, you may be creating a depth less than 20 microliters. In that case, sperm movement will be constricted or restricted, and that is going to impact on your motility assessment. So you are advised to go by the standard wet mount preparation. That will always give you a very good and reproducible resource. Right. So the sperm motility test is used to examine the percentage of motile sperms in the sample, as well as the ones that are able to move in terms of rapid progression. So it means that even as you are doing the examining their movement, you're also examining whether they are moving straight or they are moving haphazardly. All right. But when you talk about motility, we have something called total motility. So motility in general. So it doesn't matter whether somebody is moving fast or somebody is moving slow. Every movement is movement. So that totality is your total motility. I hope that point is clear. So even if you have some sperms that could even be, as you move to the progression stage, you see some sperms that could also be described as almost stationary. They are just at one point only shaking their tail. They are not making any movement at all. Yes, still they are still part of the motility. So all those will be captured plus those who are moving fast and those who are moving slow, plus those who are just staying one side and then shaking their tail, all of them included in motility. So if you talk about motility, that's what we're talking about. Total motility, progression, non-progression, what that all combined gives you your total motility. So take note of that. In that concept, it doesn't matter. You are not talking about those who are moving fast or those who are not moving fast. You're talking about motion, and every motion, whether it's stationary motion or forward motion or whatever, all of them inclusive. That gives you your total motility. It is considered the single most important measure of semen quality because it directly affects the sperm's ability to reach and fertilize an egg. I hope that you said that naturally, sperm production is not for the fun of it. It's supposed to be able to be delivered into the vagina and then travel to the cervix, go through the uterus, and then be able to meet with an egg somewhere in the fallopian tube and cause fertilization. That is anything short of it will lead to infertility. Okay, so that is that. And this is, you will need people who can move. So it means that the quality of the semen relies heavily on the ability of the sperm to move. So that's why the semen motility has been described as the mark for quality. The mark for quality. It's not like it's not sometimes it's not even about the quantity. It's about the quality. If there are few and the few can, all of them can run very fast. They are better than thousands of them who cannot move. Okay, so the sperm motility is described as the parameter to assess semen quality. All right. So the efficient passage of sperm through the cervical mucus is dependent on rapid progressive motility, and sperm show forward progressive motion of at least 25 micrometers per second. All that we're saying here is that, like I said, motility is becoming very powerful parameter to assessing fertility because the faster the thing can move, the better is it that it's able to cross. And like yesterday I mentioned, in the mucus, sorry, the eating service, that's mucus, because by nature, the service area and the uterus area should be protected. Okay, so it's not like anything can just move in and then get into the womb and then go and cause up anymore. So the womb is like on the lock and key at the service area. Okay, so it's not like, of course, there are some people who can have a defect, some abnormality at the cervical area. Okay, that is not what, but on the normal circumstance, the cervical area is like locked to some extent. And then also there's some mucus also there. That mucus is supposed to entrap any material that we want to just cross over. So it means that when the sperms are getting there, they should have the capacity to move fast to be able to traverse that mucus barrier. Okay, so that's why motility is becoming a very important parameter in sperm assessment. And for it to show what we call fast movement, you should be able to move at least 25 micrometers per second. That is the standard movement, 25 micrometers per second. All right. So even if a man has a high sperm count and the sperm have reduced motility, then it can greatly reduce male fertility potential. That point is also should be well noted. So the challenge here with the motility and as we move along in morphology is the fact that they are very, very subjective. So the motility assessment is one of the semen parameters which display very wide intra and inter-observer variations. What it means here is that they are all subjective. When they say they are subjective, the opposite of subjective is what? Objective. Is that not it? Right. So that, for example, if you are going to do sperm count, it's standardized. You are going to count them, and it's like what you count. Somebody will come in to count, and you get the same thing. That is very, very objective, based scientifically. But if it's subjective, it depends on how I see it, and it depends on how you see it. So if I see that this one is moving, and you think that it's not moving, then that becomes a challenge. So this is the problem with some of these assessments when it's based on subjectivity. All right. So that's how come the equivariation, and it can, if you say that the variation can be intra and inter. What it means is that even within the same lab, okay, even within the same lab, if I do the semen motility assessment, somebody from my own lab can also come and give me different results. Okay. And then the inter, of course, inter means different laboratory. So you take the same sample to another lab, and then it also gives you a different result. So because of the subjective nature of it, okay, so in that case, we say that it has, it lacks reproducibility. And all of you know about reproducibility. Reproducibility is repeatability. So if you repeat it, you are going to get different results. All right. And that is the challenge with the sperm motility assessment. Yeah. Right. So sperm motility is best tested within an hour of collection. Remember that we said that within 1 hour, all things being normal, the sample will have liquefied. And once the sample liquefied, you have to do your pH test, and then you do your wet mount. And it is this wet mount that is you are going to use to do the assessment of motility. So it means that all these things can be done within, and as it delays, of course, motility will reduce. So the reference ranges which have been established is based on motility within 1 hour. It's not based on motility after 2 hours or after 3 hours. So if you do it after 1.5 hours and you get a certain percentage, you cannot go and reference with the reference range, because the reference range has been established for motility within 1 hour. I hope that point is clear. All right. So you must take it, because at the end of the day, you are going to get a certain result, and that result you are going to make a reference to the reference range. The reference range has been established for movement within 1 hour. You two, you have done your motility at 2 hours. So why are you going to be able to compare your motility at 2 hours with a reference range which has been established based on 1 hour movement? I hope that point is clear. Very good. So, like I said earlier, the entire movement is the quantitative, the totality. Any movement at all is considered as part of the quantitative motility. All right. So after preparing your wet mount, leave the slab for just a minute to stabilize, and then examine the preparation on the high power objective and scan systematically several fields, at least 10 widely spaced fields. What it means is that we must go to at least 10 fields, and the 10 fields should be widely spaced. Mean that if you look here, you have to move the slide to a far place and then look at that field, move to another fireplace, and then to another field, and then get an idea about the number of sperm movement within the 10 fields. And remember, we said that under normal circumstance, you are likely to get about 20 on a normal circumstance, you're going to get about 20 sperms per field. So if I move around 10 fields, then I'm going to examine at least 200 sperms. And that's a standard practice for the semen examination. So you can look at 2-3 fields and then make a judgment. Okay. So This is what I was trying to say on the quantitative listen. You have to observe at least 300 sperms, and 300 sperms, you have covered them when you examine at least 10 fields. All right. And here you're talking about both progressive and non-progressive and blah, blah, within 1 hour. I think this place I've talked about it already. Then we are going to look at the progressive motility. So the one we're talking about is the quantitative total motility. That is all, whether it's moving left or right, that is not what we are considering. We're talking about any kind of movement. That is the quantitative. Then here we're going to look at the it's a measure of how fast temperature changes. So for uniformity, we are expected to place even the slides, the cover slide, the slips that you're going to use, the specimen itself, the tube that you're going to use, everything that you're going to use should be placed on a plate at 37 so that everything is stabilized. All right. And this is very required when you're doing the motility for qualitative motility, because the qualitative motility should be based on what is the movement at 37 degrees. Okay. So so that there will be no changes in temperature. All right, because the movement is also influenced by the temperature. To zone of inhibition. And that zone of inhibition is going to compare with a certain established chart, the CLSR chart. And so if you're going to compare your zone of inhibition with that chart, then you should have also conformed to the requirements that was used to establish that chart. Otherwise, you cannot compare your AST results with any chart anywhere. That's why to be required that, oh, so if they say that if you are doing the AST, you should use Muller-Hentin. And so because the chart was established based on using Muller-Hentin. So you can't go and use nutrient agar, even though somebody will say that, oh, nutrient agar and then Muller-Hentin, they are the same. But the requirement is that use Muller-Hentin because the standard has been established based on the use of Muller-Hentin. They say that the depth of the chamber should be 4 millimeters. So you can't go and use any depth, let's say 2 millimeters or 5 millimeters, and get a zone and go and compare with the chart. The chart was established based on a media depth of 4 millimeters. So that is what we are talking about. Once you are going to reference your results with a certain WHO values, then you should also ask yourself, what were the conditionalities that was used to establish those reference ranges? So if you go and use anything different, you can't go and compare your results with the WHO reference range. I hope that that point is very clear. For example, you're saying that if you are doing motility assessment assessment is established based on movement at 37 degrees within the 1 hour. So you can't do yours at room temperature, and let's say after 2 hours, and still compare your results with the reference range. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Good. So to evaluate the sperm progressive motility, place a drop of the well-mixed undiluted semen sample on a pre-warmed slide. And pre-warmed here means that probably if you have a plate, then the slide should be on it so that there will be no changes in the movement. And then also apply your cover slip. Still on the qualitative movement. So, of course, using the high power objective lens, subjectively assess. So this is the element of subjectivity. So subjectivity becomes one of the challenges with respect to sperm assessment of parameters such as motility, and when it comes to morphology too, the same thing. Morphology too is also based on subjectivity. So what you see as normal, somebody come and see that it's not normal. Okay, but you have recorded it as normal, and therefore your percentage is going to be different. Somebody comes to look at this, oh, you know, this one, look at the neck. The neck is not too smooth, and therefore it's abnormal. You understand? So when it comes to some of these things, because of the element of subjectivity, results can sometimes vary, and there's nothing you can do about it. That is the challenge with the testing as it is. So rapid progressive motility requires, as we said earlier, 25 micrometers per second at 37 degrees. Now, there's also a certain indication here that the movement can also be 20 micrometers per second at 20 degrees. So what it means is that if you don't have the benefit of the pre-warm slice, but you did it at room temperature, around 20 degrees, then you don't expect the movement to be as fast as you would have been if you did it at 37. And so once you also know this, you can also make adjustment in your reporting. I hope that point is clear. So that what it means is that when the sperms are moving at 37 degrees, they'll move faster. When they are moving at room temperature, they'll move slower. But the slow movement should be considered as high because you should have compensated. This is going to compensate for the difference in the temperatures. I hope that point is clear. Good. And remember, there's some MB here. 25 micrometers is approximately equal to 5 head lengths. You know, we've said that the length of a normal head is between 5 to 6 micrometers. Do you remember? And then the width is around 2.5 to 3.5. You remember this is all right. So if the thing is moving 25 micrometers per second, then it means that for once it moves 5 times, okay. So any movement is like moving 5 times the head size. That's what it means. So within 1 second, this is how fast the thing is moving. This is just for your understanding of how fast a sperm can move. All right. And then, of course, it's also half the tail length. You know that the tail is somewhere in the range of around 50 micrometers. Okay. You have to know all this because when it comes to the morphology assessment, you're going to look at what we call the strict criteria. Strict criteria is saying that if the thing should be less than 50 micrometers, even if you have it 52, it should be considered as abnormal. Strict. That's how come now sperm morphology has been set at 4%. Because you are making so strict that any small abnormality which could have been overlooked is now considered as abnormal. And therefore, those who are normal are actually normal from all aspects of based on the normal characteristics. Okay. So you need to know some of these sizes so that if you say that you are going to look at the morphology and you are using a strict criteria, then the strict criteria says that the length of the tail should be around 50 micrometers. If it is getting to 55 or 52, it is abnormal. But if you don't know these dimensions already, how are you going to assess if something is abnormal or not abnormal based on the strict criteria? Okay. So the qualitative sperm motility assessment can be graded as one, rapid progressive motility, slow or sluggish progressive motility, non-progressive motility, which will also be called a stationary motility, the immotility. Those who are footballers, sometimes they say that there's some players who stand play. What it means that if they say play number 10, they are just standing at number 10 position. They will not even move. They will stand there. They want the ball to come to them before they move. So that's just by the way. So the non-progressive motility is moving, but it will not move an inch. It will just be standing one side, one point, and then on the spot, and then shaking the tail. And he, according to him, is still moving. All right, that's just by the way. So this is the way that things can be graded. So let's look at the grades. So the first grade, grade A, is rather the reverse, motility 4. So grade A, so you have 4 grades. Now, so the grade A is 4, not motility 1. So it depends on how you are describing them. So if you're using the grade, and the grade is our grade A, B, C. If you are using motility 1, motility 2, motility 3, then rather the grade A become motility 4. Grade B become motility 3 in that order. All right. So, all right. I think somebody is raised the hand.
Hello.
Anything?
Yeah, Grandpa. Hello.
Somebody raise the hand there.
Hello, Doc. Hello.
Unfortunately, I can't hear you. So if you have raised your hand, can you type
so
it?
please send your
I got
question
indication that
text.
somebody has raised the hand.
All right.
Send a message. You can read it and then respond.
Okay, so so the hands are down now. Eh? Okay. So let's move on. So grade A, which is motility 4, is rapid progressive motility, in which case the sperm will move fast forward. Okay, fast, and for that matter, rapid, and then actively forward, being linear, going straight. So no curve, no bend. There are some, they are moving fast, they cannot move straight, but they'll go and then curve. But so that curve is not a sharp curve. So we call them large circles. So that is also like forward movement. So it's the large circles and then the straightforward, they are all put together into grade A. For as long as they are moving fast and greater than 25 micrometers per second. Okay. The grade B, slow or sluggish progressive movement. The sperm moves slowly and then will curve. Okay, so that one too, not a sharp curve, but will curve. But the movement is also slow. This is where the problem comes in, that if the specimen is examined at room temperature, then the room temperature itself will also cause a reduction in the motility. Right. So the rapid linear on all those things, you see, we group everything into 4. And so the rapid linear, fast forward, all those things comes under group A. Okay, otherwise you can have the rapid linear as one, then rapid forward curve also But for as long as they are all moving fast, whether they are moving linearly or in small curves, they all fall under group A. This is the new categorization. How the point is clear, right? So yes, you have the linear movement, the rapid linear, but they are not different from the ones that are also moving fast and also in large circles. All of them have been put together into grade A. Otherwise, you are going to get too many grades. But the grades are now 4. That's the new classification. Okay, right. So then come to the grade B. So those that are slow or sluggish motility that also move in curves and stuff. Even if it's also linear, but they are slow, it's on a group B. If they are also slow and non-linear, it's like curves, they are also on the group B. So all of them are on the group B. I'm saying that this is where the challenge comes when the specimen is already being examined at lower temperature. When it's at lower temperature, if you don't take care, all the grade A and B will be grouped as group B. The A and B will put together as B. Okay, and that could also reduce the motility report. Okay, so as much as possible, if you can warm our slides and cover slips so that it doesn't create differentials in the temperatures. That would be very well appreciated. Then, of course, grade C is the one that sometimes requires on the spot or stationary. So non-progressive motility. Okay, they show motility less than 5 micrometers per second. They are just not making any forward movements, just on the spot, stationary, but you see that they are not dead. They're showing some kind of movement. So that also comes under grade C. Okay, right. And then you come to the last one, which is immotile. Grade D, which becomes the motility 1. Immotility, immotile. Sperm do not move at all and are probably dead. Here, the thing is probably, but probably they are not dead. So that will bring in the concept of viability. So you can have immotility where they are not dead, yet they are not showing any kind of movement. Okay, they are not dead, they are not showing any kind of movement. Please hold on. All right, so you have the immotility and they are not, you cannot confirm that they are dead. There must be another test to confirm whether they are dead or not. But all that you can say that they are immotile, but you cannot say that they are dead. Because sometimes some people say immotility, into bracket dead. No, they are not dead. You can't say that the fact that they are not moving doesn't make them dead, even though they could be dead. But you cannot just say that immotility is equivalent to dead. All right. A semen sample is considered normal when more than 40% of the sperms are able to move and over 32% are able to make forward progressive movement. That's in the group A and group B combined if they are more than 32. So you see that now with the new classification, a lot of the parameters have been decreased. Okay. So and that will come to another challenge where you have somebody in lab A using, let's say, a WHO 5th edition. Somebody's using 6th edition. Somebody's using another classification. So different labs are using different classifications. And all classifications have different reference ranges. And then it creates a problem. Okay, it creates a problem. So one of the things that we may be doing is try to conform to the standards. So if all of us say that let's use the new WHO reference standards, then all of it, so that whichever way, wherever you are, we are all using the same reference. So what I'm saying is that if you look at the 5th edition WHO manual, which was recorded in 2010, that was what had been used for a very long time. People are using it. The current one, the 6th edition, was published in 2021. Yet a lot of people are more familiar with the 2010 edition, and they keep on making references with regard to that. And I'm saying that if you look at the current edition, a lot of the variables have been decreased. Okay, so motility, sometimes in previous books, they will keep motility for more than 50%. Now, motility of 40% is considered normal. Okay, and then if you have A and B progression together giving you 32%, is still considered normal. If you have sperm count of 15%, is considered normal. So we need to be able to also adjust our references. And before you adjust our references, you must conform to what they say you should do. Because you can't do something a certain way and then go and use that reference range. That could be problematic. Good. If greater than 60 sperms are immotile, then the sperm should check for what we call viability. If more than 60% are immotile, then it means that, of course, motility is going to be less than 40%. But you say that we want motility to be more than 40%. So if immotile ones are more than 60, then technically it's going to make motility reduce. And therefore, you have to check out why those that are even immotile, whether they are actually completely dead or they are alive. Okay, so that will now move us to the phenomenon of viability check. Of course, poor sperm motility is termed actinozoospermia. All right, the other day, I'm sure we talked about the terato. When I say terato is got to do with a monster, and therefore the shape is bizarre, and therefore that will be teratozoospermia or teratospermia. Here you're talking about actino, meaning poor motility. All right. As we move along and getting to the latter end, when we are dealing with pathologies in the sperm counting, then you can put all of these things together. For example, a certain sample could be, will have reduced motility. That same sample could have reduced morphology. And we said that morphology, abnormal morphology, terato. And then we have abnormal motility also actino. So if it's both actino and basin, it could be actino teratospermia. Okay. And then as we come to the other section of count, we use the terminology oligospermia, for example, if the sperm count is lower. So if the sperm count is lower and the same sample, the motility too is lower, and then morphology too is lower, then you have oligospermia, we have actinospermia, we have teratospermia. You can combine all of them. So it become oligo-actino-teratospermia, which we call the oat syndrome. Oat because O is oligo, and then the A is actino, and then T is terato. So you are getting an oat, not that the person is eating oat. So oat syndrome. I mean, but I'm taking all these things at this point, so that when we get there, you already have the understanding of it already. Okay, so actinozoospermia or actinospermia is where the motility is abnormal. So we said that when the immotile or immotility component is more than 60%, you should investigate. So if it means that if immotility is, let's say, 20%, and then the motile ones is over 60%, there's no need to do the viability test. How that you're getting me? Because the thing is that we're saying that it is normal, already normal. If you have more than 60% and even less than 40% being immotile, it's normal. Okay, so if it's normal, you don't need to find out whether those who are immotile, whether they are dead or not. It doesn't change the fraction. However, if the motility is low, less than 40%, and rather immotility is more than 60%, then you want to find out what has happened. So vitality or the viability test becomes necessary only when your immotility level is higher than normal. I hope that point is clear. So sperm may be immotile, yet may be alive and not dead. Okay, right. Sperm viability, and for that matter, vitality testing is used to determine if the non-motile sperm are alive or dead, and are indicated when sperm motility is less than 40%. So when the entire sperm motility is less than 40%, it means that immotility is more than 60%. That's when sperm viability test becomes necessary. Otherwise, you don't need it. So it's the same thing here. If immotile sperms exceed 60%, it becomes clinically important to differentiate between immotile and dead sperm from immotile and live sperms. Good. Sperm viability or vitality. The percentage sperm viability or vitality is a measure of the proportion of sperms that are immotile but alive. So that point is clear. So you want to check whether how many of the immotile ones are alive. A high number of immotile and viable sperms. Listen to this, it looks clumsy a little bit. A high number of immotile and viable sperms may be due to structural defects in the flagellum. So if there's a flagellum defect, okay, if there's a flagellum defect, then the sperms will come out, they cannot move, but yet they are very, very viable. Okay, this is what, and this is where you have a condition called primary ciliary dyskinesia, where it affects the ultrastructure of the flagella, and then it's the flagella that will have to propel the sperms from moving. So if it has that kind of structural incapacitation, then it means that they'll be born or they'll be delivered as immotile sperms, even though they are not dead. A high number of immotile and non-viable sperms may be due to epididymal pathology. All right, so if the sperms are immotile and also non-viable, it means that they are dead. Then it means that they were stored in the epididymis, and so the epididymis has a duty to protect them. Remember, we talked about the epididymal functions. They may be protected. So if there's a problem with the epididymis, and therefore the epididymal function has been compromised, then the sperms will come out already dead. Okay, so that is what it means. So if the sperms are coming out already dead, they are immotile, and you do a test and find out they are actually very dead, then you can look at what is happening in the epididymis and not what is happening in the testicles per se. Okay. I think this place, you've said it already, the fact that the testing is determining whether the immotile ones are actually dead or alive. And the fact that you need to do the test only when the motility is less than 40% and immotility is more than 60%. Right, let's look at the staining technique. Vital staining of the sperm allows quantification of the fraction of the living cells independent of their motility. So I'm sure as scientists, all of us basic scientists, we did vital staining in histopathology. Vital staining is where you are staining live cells. So sometimes you can stain in vivo. The cells can be stained in vivo. That is intravital staining. Once you bring it outside, they're still alive, then you can stain. That's also supravital staining. Okay, so here we are talking of the sperm. You want to stain the sperm to find out whether they are alive. So it means that you want to stain live cells. Okay, but they are already out of the system. They are already out of the human being because they have been ejaculated. So that yet you want to stain them while they are alive. Then that becomes supravital staining, and you use eosin. Here, the trick is that eosin do not stain vital stains, do not stain vital live cells. Yet you are using it as a supravital staining. How? Why? And as we move along, you understand it. If we say that we want to stain the sperms or the cells while they are alive, because we want to say whether we want to check whether they are alive or not. Take note of this. We want to stain whether they are alive or not. And you say you are using the supravital staining technique. Meanwhile, eosin is not a vital stain. Eosin cannot stain live cells. So why are we using it here as a supravital stain? So it means that yes, even though it's a supravital staining technique, the principle behind is not supravital. Let's see what it is. I hope you are following me. Good. So now let's look at the principle. Remember, we said that we want to stain cells alive. Staining cells alive is using a vital staining. If the stains are being done within, while the cells are within the body, is intravital staining. If the sample has been taken outside, yet you want to stain it alive, that's supravital staining. And we have vital stains, stains that have capacity to stain living cells. And we're saying that eosin here, we use eosin here. However, eosin is not one of the vital stains. Okay, eosin is not one of the vital stains. So then what is the principle of the use of eosin staining as supravital stain in the sperm life or death testing? The eosin staining test for sperm viability is based on the principle of membrane integrity of the sperm. It's used on membrane integrity of the sperm. So where the live spermatozoa have its membrane integrity is not a vital stain. When it's a vital stain, they will have a way of forcing themselves into the cell. This one, eosin is not a vital stain. And then this membrane is also intact. Because eosin to push yourself into it, what will it do? It means that it will not allow you to come into it. And therefore, the live cell will not be stained. I hope the point is clear. So in the eosin tests, live sperms will not be stained. And then it means that it is demonstrating that the live cell has its membrane integrity uncompromised. It has its membrane integrity intact. If it has its membrane integrity intact, and you are a stain which don't have the capacity to knock into a living cell, then it means that you'll be expelled. You will not be allowed to enter there. So therefore, the live sperm will not be stained, and it will be colorless. As simple as that. And because of that, we use another principle called dye exclusivity. or dye exclusion. So it means that the same principle from another angle, that because the sperm has its membrane integrity intact, and eosin cannot, it's not a true vital stain, it cannot penetrate, then it means that the living cell will exclude it, will not allow it to come and stain it. So in one breath, it is a test for membrane integrity. In another breath, it is also called dye exclusivity, dye exclusion, because now the cell is intact, it's well alive, even though it is not moving, but it's well alive. Its membrane integrity is not compromised, and therefore it will not allow any cell, especially a stain which has like a macromolecule, a bigger molecule, will not allow it to come and pass through it. And so it is a test for membrane integrity. It's also based on dye exclusion. So the next slide will talk about dye exclusion, but I'm just using this one to let you know that it is the same thing being explained from two different angles. All right. And so when we talk about the dead sperms actually have their membrane damaged. They have their cell membrane damaged. When they have their cell membrane damaged, it means that they have lost their membrane integrity. And for that matter, the eosin can penetrate. Eosin cannot penetrate what we call living cells. That's why we are saying that even though this is supposed to be a supravital staining, the stain which is being used is not a vital staining, because it cannot penetrate a living cell. Once it cannot penetrate a living cell, what it can do is to penetrate those that are already dead. So in that case, eosin is staining the cell, not because it is living, it is because it's not living. And so therefore, it means those that are dead will pick up the stain. So you see that you are not using the eosin to differentiate between those who are dead and who are not dead. Those who are not dead, sperms will not allow, the cell will not allow the eosin to penetrate. So that's excluded. Those who are dead, they have already lost their membrane integrity, and therefore eosin can also now penetrate, and therefore go and stain the sperm cells, particularly the head. And so once you see the sperm head and eosin is pinkish, once you see the sperm head staining pinkish, what can you say? What is the conclusion? You are using the eosin staining, and then you saw that the head is pinkish. Is it dead or alive? Yes, you can tell me.
It's a dead cell.
The sperm head is stained pinkish. What is your conclusion?
A dead cell.
Quick.
A dead cell.
Yes, they are dead. Because if they were not dead, and since eosin 2 is not a vital stain that has capacity to force itself into a living cell, then it means that now the sperm is dead. That's why the eosin is able to now go and then stain it. So thank you. Yes, Ramsey. So that is so the viability stain is very, very simple. Just get your eosin, and then as you move along, you show you how the test is actually performed. Very, very simple. The principle is very, very interesting. Okay, all right. So the eosin dye enters and stains dead sperm. That's the non-vital or the non-viable cell due to a damaged plasma membrane or loss of membrane integrity. Okay. Now, so the next principle is the dye exclusion. It's the same principle explained from another angle, where they are saying that, okay, because the membranes, the cell which is not dead, or the living one, or those that are alive have their membrane integrity, they will exclude the eosin from coming to stain it. And so that's dye exclusion. So it's the same principle. So once it's dye excluded, what will be the stain of that sperm? It will be colorless. It will not stain. And those that are not able to exclude it, then the what we call it, the same will now enter it. And so that is all. So it is that exclusion principle is virtually it's like the other side of the coin. Okay, the other side of the membrane integrity test. All right. Now, so we're using the word eosinophilic. Eosinophilic is like you're able to pick, they have affinity for eosin. So which of the cells will be eosinophilic? Yes. You can tell me. Which of the cells will be eosinophilic, the dead or the living one? They are talking about eosinophilic is talking not eosinophils as in hematological eosinophils. We're saying that now, yes, I hope you get me. The dead ones are described as eosinophilic because now they will now have the affinity to pick up the eosinophils, and the cell becomes eosinophilic and therefore pick it. So once you understand this way, you see that it becomes interesting. Okay, it becomes very, very interesting. So dead sperms are described as eosinophilic. Great. So now let's see. It's a matter of getting eosin Y. I'm sure some of you can get them. Sometimes they may even be in your stores. You don't know that they are there because you don't use them. So eosin Y, and if you go to those facilities that do histology, you know they use the H&E, hematodulin eosin. So they have eosin Y, plenty. You can get them if you want to do it. Remember, I said that the viability testing is not like you have to do it at all costs. It's not it becomes indicative when you have a lot of dead or immotile sperms. Otherwise, you don't need to do it. All right. So using why it can be done as 1% or 0.5%. That is the staining reagent. So I have an example here of how to prepare 20 mils of 0.5%. Because if you have 1%, 0.5%, I'm sure 0.5 will be cheaper. Okay, because that's this a diluted form of the 1%. All right. So if you go and somebody gives you some small amount of eosin Y, then it means that you can prepare at least some small amount, because at the end of the day, when it comes to a procedure, just one drop of the reagent for the testing. Okay, so for 0.5%, how will you prepare it? Remember, this is a powder. So if it's a powder and you're preparing 0.5%, what it means is that it is 0.5 grams in 100 mils. 0.5% means 0.5 grams in 100 mils. 0.5% means 0.5 grams in 100 mils. Now, if you just want 20 mils, okay, then it means that the 0.5, I just want you to understand this particular point. 0.5 grams in 100 mils will give you 0.5%. So if I say just prepare 20 mils, what it means is that instead of the 100 mils, you are going to get 20 mils there. What will you do to get your 20 mils? You will tell me. I'm saying that you are going to prepare just 100 mils, 20 mils. And 0.5% actually means 0.5 grams in 100 mils. So if you take 0.5 grams and then dissolve it in 100 mils, you are going to get your 0.5%. But I'm saying that we just want to prepare 20 mils. So what must we do to our 100 mils? What must we do?
We divide by 5.
Yes, please come on.
We divide by 5.
Quick. Reagent preparation. We want to prepare just 20 mils. So what must we do?
So you
Please come in. Yes, sir. Divide by 5. Great. Desmond. Yes, great. So we are going to divide the 100 mils by 5. You are going to get to 20. So you must also divide your 0.5 by 5. If you divide your 0.5 by 5, what do you get? Yes. You divide your 0.5 by also by 5, what do you get?
0.1.
Great. So 0.1. So what it means is that if you weigh 0.1 gram of your using Y and dissolve in 20 mils, you are still going to get your 0.5% UOC. That is all. This basic reagent preparation techniques. Don't go and because 0.5% means 0.5 grams in 100 mils. Then you go and prepare 100 mils and put it down for after 2 years, then you haven't used it. So why can't you prepare just a little amount? You can even prepare 10 mils, still of your 0.5%. What it means is that divide your 100 by 10. You are going to get 10, what do you call it? You are going to get 10 mils. And then you divide the 0.5 also by 10. You are going to get 0.05. And that is it. So any volume can be prepared once you understand this basic dynamics. All right, so let's move on. So now you have prepared your reagent. You have your 0.5% UOC sitting down. So if you want to do a test, usually it's 1-to-1 ratio of the semen to the dye. And our dye here is what? Our dye here is what? Yes. What is our dye here? Usually 1-to-1 ratio of semen to dye. What is our dye here? Yes.
Using.
What is our dye here? I hope you are not sleeping.
Eosin.
The dye is what?
Eosin.
Yeah, great. So that is the 0.5% reagent stain using that you have prepared. So just one ratio of 1-to-1. What it means that if you take 1 drop of the semen, great, yes. So you get it. You are following it. Fantastic. So you take 1 drop of your semen, you take 1 drop of your reagent which you have prepared, your 0.5% using that you prepared. Just mix on the same, and then apply a copper slip. That's all. At 30 seconds, then you can examine. Maximum 2 minutes, but not because it's a wet mount. So if you leave it for more than 5 minutes, the thing is going to dry up. Okay. So, but you need some little time for the reaction to take place. So up to 2 minutes, okay. But normally even after 30 seconds it will work. Okay. So you examine, and then you are going to see some of the what do you call it? Sperms staining pinkish, some being colorless. Those who are colorless are alive because they are not dead. They will not allow the stain to come in and stain it. Remember, we said that using is not, take note, it's not a butter stain. We're talking about butter stain, talking about the brilliant crystal green. That's what is used in what do you call it? Hematology for reticular stain. You know that is a butter stain. They're able to force themselves into a living cell. All right. So this one we are saying that using, even though the technique is supposed to be suprabutter staining, take note, using is not a butter stain, and therefore it cannot stain living cells. But using the principle of dye exclusivity, that I'm not dead, I will not allow you to stain. Those who are dead, they cannot speak. So as for them, you can go and stain. Understand how? So you are using it to differentiate between dead and cells that are alive. Okay. Now, so as we discussed over again, those who will be staying, they are dead. Those who are not staying, then you are looking at the percentage of those who are dead versus those who are not dead, and strike out your percentage. Very, very simple to do. So identify stem which are still red, which are of course dead, while viable sperm unstained and therefore appear white or colorless. We count about 100 cells and then also take those that are dead and not dead, you strike out the what do you call your percentage. That's all. Very, very simple. Very, very, very simple. And it's one of the easiest tests that you can do in your labs. So the eosin staining technique, the viability test, eosin do not stain viable sperm cells. Therefore, so in this particular one, you see, this one is not stained, colorless. This one appears pinkish. And remember, it's a wet mount. Okay, if you look here, these ones are all stained pinkish, and therefore they are all dead. This one is not. This one is colorless. This one is colorless. This one is colorless. So they are all, even though they were previously immotile, but it tells you that they are not dead. Okay, so you strike out the percentage. So, for example, you are getting a total of 6 sperms. Out of the total, 3 of them are dead. So it becomes 50%. As simple as that. Okay, very, very, very simple. All right, but like I've said, you don't do it for every test, especially if the motility is already high. You don't need to do it. Okay. Significance of the sperm viability test. Also, the sperm viability test is used to select sperm for intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Okay, in surgically retrieved testicular tissues, sperms are alive but generally non-motile. So all that you're saying here is that, you see, there are some people, if let's say there is a ductal blockage where the sperms cannot come out, as you move along, you're going to do about the obstructive azoospermia and non-obstructive and so forth and so on. So when it is obstructive, what it means is that, oh, there are some obstructions, say that the ejaculate that comes out has no sperms, but actual sperms are being produced. And probably there is a surgical means by which sperm that have been produced from testes can be retrieved through surgical intervention. But remember, in that case, you have to do the viability test because, you see, like we said, sperm maturation also occurs within the epididymis, is that not it? And the movement and everything will have to occur through the epididymis. Now, the sperms which are being extracted or retrieved from the testicles don't have the benefit of experience in the epididymis. Okay, and therefore, when they come out, you may have to be a test to find out whether they are dead or, because technically they will be non-motile. There will be no motile, but you have to do a test to find out whether they are dead or not. So if they are not dead, then that sperm can be used for intracytoplasmic sperm injection, ICIS. That is one of the techniques for the ART, artificial reproductive technology. Okay, you're not going to go there, but I'm sure you know something about that. So when the person is unable to fertilize naturally, but there is an artificial means where you are using the person's own sperm rather than going for a donor. Okay. So all those techniques are there. So that's where sperm viability becomes important. You want to know whether the sperms, you don't expect it to be alive, to be moving, but still you want to know whether it's dead. And then you use the test to rule out those. If they are all dead, it means that even from right from birth, they are already dead, then that could be a different ball game altogether. All right. Now, the sperm morphology is a long distance, so I'm sure some of you are already tired. So we'll end here. Hopefully, it is my prayer that you'll be able to complete the whole exercise by Saturday, God willing. So I don't want to overload you because this thing we want to learn and go and practice. So you don't have to just skip over without you understanding anything. So on that note, we'll end here. Tomorrow, God willing, because we've already done the morphology extensively, we are going to go fast here. here we're going to look at how we will I think we can, let's give you some five minutes. I think we can do the sperm morphology and then we move on. So with the sperm morphology, of course, smears will have to be prepared. And then we are going to go by the latest WHO recommendations or standards, the sixth edition, which uses what we call a strict criteria. Strict criteria was developed long time ago by Kruger, Tigerberg. So we have Kruger is the same person, but sometimes we call it the Tigerberg criteria, sometimes we call it the Kruger criteria. I hope that you are getting me. It's like saying Grandpa Thomas, and then sometimes you want to say Grandpa, and sometimes you want to say Thomas, sometimes you want to say Thomas, something like that. So you can come across the Tigerberg criteria. You can also come across, you can also come across the Kruger criteria. It's the same thing. Now, even with the criteria, some people call it let's say the Tigerberg or the Kruger method. And then some also call it the Kruger classification and so forth and so on. So I'm bringing all these things. So depending on how you read it or how you see it, you are not confused. So now the WHO has now adopted this Kruger strict criteria for its current edition. All right, so the WHO criteria is now the same thing as the Kruger, what people usually call a strict criteria. All right, so, and what is that criteria? The criteria is saying that we know what is a normal sperm cell. And so we are going strictly by that definition or characteristics. So any slight difference from what we know it to be, take it as abnormal. That is the strict. And this is what WHO is also now taking up. So it is better to go by the Kruger's strict criteria classification. This is what is now being adopted by WHO. Okay, so all that it means is that you know that a normal sperm should have an overhead, should have an acrosome covering 40 to 70%. In the head area, it should have head, this means no head defect, no leg defect, no nothing. And then the CD, of course, you know the CD cytoplasmic droplet should not be larger than 50%. Everything, this is your criteria. Anything shorter than this is abnormal. So by the Kruger strict criteria classification, sperm is classified as normal only if the sperm shape or the appearance falls within the strict defined parameters of the shape, and all borderline forms are considered abnormal. But even the smallest is still considered abnormal. And sometimes some can be even over strict. The so-called strict criteria, some people can be over strict. Okay, so that's because it is still subjective. Remember, we said that some of the tests, especially the motility and then the morphology, they are subjective. Depends on how you see it. So you want to apply the rules. Some people over-apply the rules, over-apply it. They say that, oh, the hair should be over. And then even the measure, some people will measure it, even if it is 0.1 micrometer above the normal, they say no, it is abnormal. Some can be all right, so that is that. So, and then once you have established all the characteristics and then determine which ones are normal, and then you can now, the normal ones over the total number of sperm that you saw, multiply by 100 becomes your morphology. And when you apply the strict criteria, then they say that even if you have 4%, it is normal, because you know that now it's like you have taken the best out of the best, taking the best out of the best, and therefore 4% is considered normal. So that's what it is. And so I'm sure you have gone through the abnormal sperms, normal ones, and so you know this already. So you wouldn't worry ourselves. And then you just looking at the states that are used. In well-resourced laboratories, they use the papanuclear stain, the pap stain, where the histology people use for cytological stains. So that stains all aspects of the cell. And so that would have been the best. But that is also used in well-established andrology laboratories. But of course, we are not there yet. And so there could be simpler methods using HNG, the hematology and UOC. And then even the Giemsa staining can still be used if you want to look at the sperm morphology very well. You can do this. So that's also going to be another challenge. One, because it's going to be subjective, it can have a problem. And because you can use papanuclear, some can use HNU, some can use staining, Giemsa stain. It means that because different techniques can also be used, it can also be a problem. Okay, and then it comes to the issue of personal, how you also want to look at it. So it makes the sperm morphology assessment really, really challenging, but I'm sure you know what to do. There is another easier way to look at it. So now, whichever stain that you have used, you are going to look at the morphology based on the Kruger strict criteria, and then determine your listing. The last thing that we want to talk about is the eosin nigrosin staining. This is one of the easier ways we want to also do. We want to kill two birds with one stone. Remember, we said that you can use the eosin for your vitality or viability tests. Then you can use the nigrosin too. So when you're using the nigrosin also nigrosin becomes a negative staining. What's a negative staining? Yes, what's a negative staining? Yes. Basics. Negative staining.
A stain that stains.
Yes, you can give me. You've done very, very well. Answers have been very, very great. So negative staining, yes.
Negative stain stains the background, but not the cells itself.
What is negative staining? Yes, answer coming. Very good. Felix, great. You made it.
Eric.
It says in the background. It's unable to. However, if by definition, staining is imparting color to something. So if you are not able to impart color to that something, and then you're only staining the outside, and then it's not a true definition of the staining. Staining means impart color to something. So before you can impart color to something, it means that you must penetrate it and then express yourself there. So if you're not able to do that and you're only staining the outside, then that's negative staining. That is very great of you. And a typical example is the use of India ink in cryptococcus staining, those of you in microbiology. All right. So here, I'll tell you something. Nigrosin staining is actually an acidic stain. Remember, we said that in bacteriology, most of our stains are what? Are basic stains. Not too strong basic stains, but weak basic stains. So if they are basic stains, because the bacteria you want to stain, bacteria are more like the cytoplasm, but the bacteria are usually acidic because of their prokaryotic nature. And so the inside is acidic. You usually will need a basic stain to be able to stain it. We have nigrosin as an acidic stain. Okay, if nigrosin is an acidic stain, it means that they have extra negative charge. Is that not it? So Now, the cell wall of sperms are negatively charged. Okay, cell walls of sperms are negatively charged. So what it means that nigrosin cannot go and stain the sperm cells. Okay, it cannot go and stain the sperm cells. So the best it can do is to actually stain the background of the sperm cells. If you stain the background of the sperm cells, what does it do? What it means that it is giving you opportunity to actually visualize the sperm, discern all the features of the sperm. Because if you have a sperm and then the outside has been stained, then it brings out the sperm on stained dough, but brings it out so that you can see its shape. And so it means that you can use the negative staining, nigrosin, which is going to serve as a negative stain, to actually help you to actually visualize the sperm very well, so that you can actually describe the, what do you call it, the shape, the appearance, the neck, and everything of it. Because the neck, they don't need to be stained. You're only looking at it and saying that, oh, it is smooth, it is oval, it is so it is meeting the characteristics of the morphology of a normal sperm. Okay, so it doesn't. So it means that nigrosin is going to be used as negative stain to help you to see the true appearance, shape of the sperm. And then you have eosin, which is also going to help you to look at those sperms which are dead or what, alive. So it means that when you combine eosin and nigrosin, you are going to kill two birds with one stone. So the eosin nigrosin staining technique is very simple and a technique that is like I've said, two birds killing one stone. You are going to use it for viability and also for morphology. And very, very, very simple. Anybody can do it in your lab. Sometimes people call it the dead or alive stain. Dead or alive stain, just because it is, when you use the eosin nigrosin stain, it's going to help you to check out for the viability, those that are dead or alive, and also going to help you to also identify the shape of the sperms. And it is very, very, very simple. Any one of us can do it in the lab. So the eosin nigrosin staining technique is a simple and effective one-step procedure commonly used for sperm viability and morphology examinations. The principle is that sperm cells or spermatozoa, such as those with damaged cell membrane, will uptake the eosin. This one you know already. And then staining the head of the spermatozoa red. The nigrosin component of the stain is used as a counter stain to ease visualization of the unstained live spermatozoa. I'm sure this is what I've tried to explain. The nigrosin is going to serve as a counter stain. And the counter stain, I'm saying that is so because it's a negative stain. It doesn't also stain the sperms. It rather stains the background. Once it stains the background, it breaks out the shape of the sperm so that you can also describe the sperm as normal or abnormal. And that is what I think we can, if you don't know, we can do it. It's one of the simplest tests we can do. So the eosin nigrosin staining is sometimes described as the live dead stain because it allows the differentiation of live and dead sperms. It also permits lives to be stored for re-evaluation and quality control purposes. In this particular case, you're going to stain the slide and therefore becomes, can be kept, as opposed to the wet mount of the eosin alone, which of course for wet mounts, you cannot keep it. So the rest will be the staining procedure and what have you. And so God willing, tomorrow we will continue from here. Thank you for your time. I'm sure that you have learned something, and by the time you finish, I'm sure all of us will be well educated and well knowledgeable in the element of semen analysis, far better than we used to know. Once again, thank you for your time. I think I've exhausted your time so much, and please forgive me. On that note, if there's any question coming up, you can come up. If there's no question, then you call it a day. Good night.
I have a question.